The first time Elena saw Luca, he was standing under the old almond tree in her grandmother's orchard, staring up at the blossoms with a soft, almost reverent look on his face. He was a stranger, tall, sun-kissed, with ink stains on his hands and a notebook peeking from his satchel. Elena, home from Florence for the summer, had returned to the countryside reluctantly, convinced nothing exciting ever happened there. That belief changed the moment Luca turned, caught her staring, and smiled like he already knew her. "Do you believe trees can remember things?" he asked without introduction. She blinked, confused. "What?" "This tree," he gestured. "I think it remembers laughter. Maybe even heartbreak." Elena laughed, despite herself. "Are you always this poetic with strangers?" He held out a hand. "Only with strangers who look like they belong to stories." That was the beginning. Luca was a writer, staying in the village to finish a novel he had been struggling with. Her grandmother had offered him the small guest house near the orchard, unaware that she was also gifting Elena a summer of magic. They spent their days under the almond tree, sharing secrets, stolen glances, and sun-ripened apricots. Elena showed him the hidden corners of the village, the crumbling chapel with the mosaic ceiling, the abandoned railway bridge where the wind sang, and the lake where stars danced on the water at night. He read her lines from his book, and she painted the scenes he described. His world of words, her world of color. They blended until she couldn't tell where his stories ended and hers began. But love, like summer, is rarely still. As July turned to August, shadows began to gather. Luca received a letter. His publisher wanted him back in Rome to finalize the manuscript. He would be leaving in a week. They sat beneath the almond tree, a silence between them as heavy as the ripe fruit above. "I could stay," he said quietly. "I could ask them to wait." "No," she whispered. "You can't stop writing for me." He turned to her. "Then come with me." She hesitated. Her life was here, her grandmother, her responsibilities, the art school she was planning to open for the village children. But her heart, oh, her heart was already packed, ready to leave with him. "I can't," she said. Her voice broke like brittle petals. He nodded, understanding painted across his face like dusk. The morning he left, he tucked a letter into the crook of the almond tree, wrapped in twine and sealed with the pressed petals of a white blossom. Elena found it hours later. "My Elena, you once said nothing exciting ever happened here, but I hope now you know that love can grow in the quietest of places. You changed the ending of my story, not with grand gestures, but with your laughter, your art, your presence. I don't know what the future holds, but I promise, in every book I write, there will always be a girl with paint on her hands and stars in her eyes. If ever you decide to chase the story beyond the orchard, you'll find me waiting, under the almond trees of Rome. Yours always, Luca." Years passed. Elena stayed. She opened her school, painted murals across the village walls, and every spring, she sat beneath the almond tree, rereading Luca's letter like a sacred promise. She watched his name grow on bookshelves, saw dedications written to the girl who sees beauty in ruins. She smiled, proud and heartacheful, until one spring, she returned to the orchard and found a new letter tucked in the same place. "My Elena, if trees can remember laughter and heartbreak, I hope this one remembers waiting. I'm home again. Come find me." She ran. Past the schoolhouse, past the lake, past the chapel with the mosaic ceiling, straight to the old guest house now blooming with jasmine. He stood in the doorway, older, the same, holding the first book they wrote together. No words were needed. Elena threw her arms around him, and they kissed like time had folded, like the summer had never ended, like the almond tree had kept their place all along. And from that day forward, their story was no longer written in letters or blossoms. It was lived in whispers and ink, in paint, and in love. Elena had always believed that love stories belonged to fleeting summers, whispered into the wind and scattered like petals on a lake. But now, years after that fateful summer, as she lay in Luca's arms beneath the blooming almond tree once again, she realized something profound. The greatest love stories weren't those that burned brightest, but those that returned, again and again, like the seasons. After Luca came back, life unfolded in quieter, steadier ways. They didn't rush into marriage or declarations. Instead, they lived. A shared breakfast each morning under the vines, evenings spent reading in companionable silence, and slow dances on the kitchen floor to the crackling hum of an old record player. Luca wrote more books, but now, Elena was there for every draft. He read her scenes late at night, asking, "Is this too much? Or does this feel real?" And she would smile, tracing his words with her fingers. "If it feels like us, it's real." Elena painted again, more than ever before.
Her murals changed.
They became more intimate, more vivid. One morning, the villagers woke to a new piece on the wall behind the chapel, a woman and a man beneath an almond tree, their roots intertwined, their eyes full of memory. It was the first time Elena signed her name as E.M. Valentini. Luca watched her create it, his heart so full he could hardly write. But life, as it does, brought both light and shadow. That winter, Elena's grandmother passed away in her sleep. The village mourned her, but Elena was silent. Grief curled around her ribs, dull and quiet. She stopped painting. For weeks, she didn't step outside. Luca didn't speak of it. He simply stayed. He brewed her favorite tea. He warmed her boots near the fire. He left notes, small things, on napkins and canvases. The stars still dance over the lake. Your smile is the color of morning. You are allowed to be still. Even the sea rests. One day, Elena sat beneath the almond tree, brittle branches above her, and began to cry. "I don't know how to keep going without her," she said when Luca found her there. He sat beside her, took her hand. "Then let's not keep going.
Let's just stay
here, as long as you need." That was Luca. Not a hero from a book, but a man who understood that love wasn't always about soaring declarations. It was about staying when the world went quiet. Spring came. Elena returned to her studio. This time, she didn't paint murals. She painted her grandmother, strong hands baking bread, silver hair glowing in the sun, and finally, her smiling beneath an almond tree, arms outstretched. The painting now hangs in the village school, where children learn under her watchful, gentle gaze. And on a warm April morning, Luca and Elena married beneath that same tree. The blossoms rained down like confetti as the whole village stood to witness. There were no lavish decorations, no orchestra, just laughter, a few stray chickens wandering past, and the soft music of a string quartet made up of local teenagers. Elena wore a pale blue dress with paint smudges on the hem. Luca a linen shirt and an almond blossom tucked behind his ear. They wrote their own vows, short and true. "I vow," Luca said, "to always come back, no matter what." "I vow," Elena whispered, "to always choose the quiet magic of us." Years later, they sat with their daughter, Marina, beneath that same tree. She was drawing wildflowers in a notebook too big for her small hands. "What kind of tree is this?" Marina asked. Luca smiled. "This tree?" He touched its trunk gently. "It's a memory tree." Elena looked at him, then leaned close to her daughter. "It's where every story in our family begins." Marina, wise beyond her 7 years, looked up at them both and said, "Then I'll write my story here, too." And she did. Because love, the kind that grows deep and true, is not bound to one summer. It roots itself in ordinary days, in quiet gestures, in almond blossoms that fall and bloom again and again. And beneath that tree, the Valentinis wrote not just a love story, but a legacy. Years later, long after the blossoms had fallen one last time, the almond tree still stood, gnarled, proud, and full of secrets. Marina was grown now, a writer like her father, an artist like her mother. She returned to the village one soft spring morning, her own daughter in tow, eager to show her the tree where her family's story began. As they sat beneath the aging branches, Marina's daughter, Leah, ran her fingers along the bark and gasped. "Mama," she said, "there's something here. Hidden deep in a hollow of the tree was an old, yellowed envelope. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was unmistakable. To whomever finds this next,